You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, writer for USA Today for various SEC-related things, but on this podcast specifically, we take a dive into all things Kentucky athletics. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. I want to remind everybody that we are free and available on all podcast platforms. All right, Kentucky victors over the Vanderbilt Commodores, 77-70. We're going to go over what we saw in this game, what we saw in the first half, what we saw in the second half, and then some final thoughts here. Going to talk about my parameters around Kentucky wins, as we normally do. I'm going to go ahead and tell you, Kentucky did not check a lot of boxes tonight. In fact, this game was absolutely awful. So let's start in the first half before things just got absolutely terrible. If you watch this game, you know what happened in the second half and just how awful the pacing was. But we'll start here with the first half. Just talk about how everything was going. And early on, Grady was playing well. He got fouled on that first three, by the way. I know that there were a lot of fouls called whenever the Commodores played the Wildcats just yesterday, but there was a foul at the very beginning of the game that was not called. Vanderbilt in their offense, their isolation ball worked. We talked about it on yesterday's show. We talked about it when the Wildcats played them a few games ago. It's that weave motion offense. Everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. Baylor runs it. They run it well. Jerry Stackhouse is not running it well at Vanderbilt right now. In fact, the offense you would think would utilize a lot of different players in a lot of different ways, and they would be able to spread the ball around and pick up a lot of assists, but there's only one guy on Vanderbilt's team that really knows how to score efficiently, and they don't really like to spread the ball around much at all in an offense that is meant to do that. It's like running the air raid and trying to pass the ball around, but you're just throwing to one guy on every single play, and it just becomes meaningless at that point. But the Vanderbilt isolation ball worked early on in this game. There wasn't a lot going down for Kentucky before the under-16 timeout, and Vanderbilt had a 6-5 lead, and you're sitting there like, okay, well, eventually Kentucky's going to pull away. You know, it's going to be close here for the next few minutes, and we're going to get to the first half, and we're going to have like a 15 to 12-point lead, and then we're just going to kind of coast for the rest of the game. You've seen that happen so many different times before. Not tonight, baby. Did not happen tonight. Kentucky won, but it was not fun. Vanderbilt put a lot of pressure on Kentucky's ball handlers, and this is something that we've talked about with teams like Georgia, teams like Vanderbilt. You notice that teams like Georgia don't like to put a lot of pressure on guards or much of anybody, really. Vanderbilt has done a good job of that this season. And early on in the first half, they put a lot of pressure on Severe Wheeler and Ty Washington. And it threw Kentucky's offense out of sync. It was not very fun to watch. And Kentucky was just simply not in rhythm. Toppin had the ball stolen from him at one point in the first half. Then he blocked the potential transition bucket. It was absolutely beautiful. Had no other thing I wanted to say other than that. It was just absolutely fantastic. Just Vanderbilt putting pressure on somebody handling the ball. They got a steal, and then Toppin recovered, and just an incredibly athletic play. Severe Wheeler actually did end up picking up 2 fouls before the under-12 timeout, and that was not good. It's not good for the flow of the offense. And we talked about one of the most important things in this game being the pace, talking about how Kentucky needs to get out in transition. Didn't see a ton of it in the first half. Saw some different looks for Grady and then Shebue. And overall, it was not great, but at least it was there. In the second half, it was not. And we'll talk about that later on. But when shots weren't going in, Kentucky really just didn't have an answer on the defensive end consistently. Kentucky also was picking up fouls, which was not good in the first half. There was a 9-0 run over the course of about 4 minutes for the Commodores. Kentucky's offense completely died. Then Vanderbilt's offense completely died. There was a 17-0 run for Kentucky at one point in the first half. Kentucky simply could not guard Scottie Pippen. We talked about it yesterday. One of the big questions was, could Kentucky stop Scottie Pippen after Pippen scored 32 points against the Wildcats just a few games ago? The answer was no. In fact, he made almost half of Vanderbilt's field goals that they took the entire game. Had half the shots taken in the first half by the Commodores. And it's weird, let me ask you, would you like to play with somebody that took half the shots your offense put up? And I think that Pippen is a talented player. I think he's very good on the offensive end. I think he's going to be an NBA player, obviously, with the volume of shots that he takes. But It just doesn't really seem, honestly, with they're slow. They don't spread the ball around. They don't get rebounds. They have one player shooting. It just does not seem like a fun system to play in. That's just my opinion. And I'm not sitting here salty because it was a close game. We'll get to why it was a close game later on, but genuinely, it's not entertaining to watch, and it's not entertaining to play in. At least it would not be, in my opinion. Davion Mintz got out of a slump, was also shooting well like Grady was in the first half. We'll talk about Davion Mintz, who was arguably the MVP of this game. We'll talk about him later on in the show, but he played very well in the first half, and we'll go over some of the first half stats here real quick because I think they're interesting as opposed to what we saw in the second half. So Kentucky was shooting an even 50% from the floor in the first half, shooting 66.7% from three. Now, that wasn't sustainable, but 50% from the floor was. And we'll talk about what they had here in just a minute. But 6 of 9 from three was great to see. Kellen Grady, 4 of 5 from downtown, had 12 points. Davion Mintz was 2 of 3 in the first half from three, had 11 points. Oscar Tshiebwe had only picked up 1 foul, which was great, but he had 6 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. Tshiebwe doing a little bit of everything in the first half. Keon Brooks, I asked the question on yesterday's show, would he continue to play hot, or would he kind of return to form? And it looked like he was returning to form in the first half. He was 2 of 7 from the floor, had 7 points, and I sat there and I was going, well, yeah, he's going to finish this game with about 12. He's going to hit his average. But he played very well in the second half. We'll talk about him. But Severe Wheeler, again, a non-factor in the first half. Didn't really play much. Didn't have a single point. Had 5 assists in his limited time that he had, which was very impressive. So overall, I mean, at one point in the first half, we were up by, 14, somewhere around there. There was a 10-point lead at the half for the Wildcats. And probably the most startling statistic here at the half was the rebounding margin. So I mentioned on yesterday's show, I referenced yesterday's show a lot. I mentioned on last episode that the rebounding margin for Kentucky when they played the Commodores last time was plus 16. It was even in this game at the half, and Vanderbilt ended up out-rebounding Kentucky, which was just wild to me. It was absolutely wild. 2 assists, by the way, at the half for Vanderbilt. Beautiful offense being run. 11 assists for Kentucky. We're going to talk about what happened in the second half and just how abysmal and awful and disgusting and lame and boring, all the negative words I could use to describe what happened in the second half. We're going to talk about that and why, say it again, SEC officiating's bad. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about our friends at BetOnline. There might be less football being played, but BetOnline.net has way more odds and info for this playoff season. From scores, totals, player performance props to where the next head coach that has been fired is going to land. BetOnline is the number one spot for all things NFL betting in 2022, and it's not just football. BetOnline.net's basketball, hockey, boxing, and UFC odds coverage is the best in the business. From sports right down to your favorite Vegas casino games, BetOnline is your number one online wagering destination. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports and play your favorite games. BetOnline, where the game starts. And a lot of you Cincinnati Bengals fans, I know quite a few of them in the Kentucky Wildcats sphere. Bet you're hype about the Super Bowl appearance. Congratulations to the Bengals. Had the worst record in the NFL last season. Will be playing. I believe they are 4-point underdogs according to BetOnline.net. I'd get over there. I'm taking the Bengals to cover, baby. I think they win the whole thing. At least I hope they do. All right, second half here. Again, one of the worst second halves I've seen in a collegiate basketball game in terms of pacing. So it's interesting. I believe the official's name is Don Daly. He coached, or excuse me, did not coach. He officiated 2 days ago, officiated in the Auburn-Alabama game. And everybody was upset with the officiating in that game. And then he travels up here to Lexington, and he calls this game. And it's not necessarily Daly's fault. It's more a complaint here about the style of Vanderbilt's play. But there were so many fouls called, and most of them actually weren't on Vanderbilt. on Kentucky. They were on Vanderbilt. And I believe they had 27 fouls in this game. 27 fouls. And I tweeted this out, and I wanted to read it here for you. Not because I'm some genius and you should read everything I say, but I just think that this is how I feel about it. I said, this is why I don't like teams like Missouri, South Carolina, Vanderbilt. We complained about this 2 episodes ago. They play extremely physical. They put you on the free throw line, and then they hope the officials don't call half of the fouls they should. It makes the pacing of the game extremely choppy and awful to watch. That's what we witnessed in the second half. Fouls on both ends, technicals being issued. It was one of the worst games I've ever seen, or second halves, in terms of pacing, in terms of just flow and rhythm. It was like you could not take a breath. It was like you're trying to breathe, and every single time, there's another foul called. But I'll say this in the second half, Vanderbilt came out swinging. They shot out of their minds in the second half. Had a 21-6 run at one point in this game. Something else that I noted, Ty Washington has not been playing fantastic. I wouldn't say that he's necessarily playing bad. I just don't think that he's playing great. Was not shooting great in the first half. I'll pull up his numbers here for you just to get his final total. Finished with 7 points and was 3 of 7 from the floor, 0 of 2 from 3. I've not seen Ty knock down a 3 in quite some time. Washington also had 4 personal fouls, only played 19 minutes. So not a fantastic day for Ty Washington. Did not record an assist, only had 1 rebound. Would love to see him start to pick it up here in these next couple of games. Keon Brooks, like I mentioned earlier, started out cold. Was 3 of 7, finished 2 of 7, finished 7 of 15 from the floor. Had 20 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Played very well in this game in the second half, especially in my opinion. Keon Brooks overall, good outing. Shibwe at some point early on in the second half threw an elbow and got a tech. And honestly, I'm not going to excuse the fact that he elbowed somebody. When you elbow somebody in the face, you're going to get called for a technical. That's the way it is. But he's probably was frustrated with the way Vanderbilt was playing him. They were crowding him. They were hand-checking everybody in the building. And they were trying to get a steal on the ball, and it was just, you can't continuously hand-check teams and not get fouls called on you. Now, again, this is why I don't like teams like Vanderbilt. It's not fun basketball. It's not, and it doesn't have to be entertaining. Like, Virginia won a title playing some of the blandest basketball I've seen. Hard defense, offense that barely exists. But this team, I mean, it's just not good basketball, in my opinion, what Vanderbilt was playing. And if I were Shibwe, I probably would have gotten frustrated. At some point in the second half, the announcer said, after Shibwe got a tech, it's like, it's not necessarily been a physical game. And then the next 15 minutes proceeded to be some of the most physical basketball Kentucky's played all season. And a lot of it had to do with what was happening with the rebounding. Kentucky got out-rebounded in this game, which is something I would have never said heading into a game against Vanderbilt, who has literally averages the least amount of rebounds per game in the SEC. Kentucky had a -7 rebounding margin. They had 3 more offensive rebounds, but a -7 rebounding margin, which is wild to me. Vanderbilt, like I mentioned again, hand-checked everybody in the building all night, everybody in the stands too, which is probably why the Commodores didn't really shake hands at the end of this game, because they had already given everybody a dap up before the buzzer was sounded. Davion Mintz, talked about him having a really good game. Going to go ahead and get to some of his numbers here. Had 21 points, career high, was 6 of 11 from the floor, 4 of 7 from 3, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. Had a couple of steals, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. Great game from Davion Mintz. And I've been saying this for a couple of episodes now. Mintz has to get out of a shooting slump. He's going to be very important. There he is, 21 points. Really appreciate it. Something else to note in this game is about 500,000 shots rimmed out for Kentucky. They had so many good looks. So many good looks go in and out. And it was not necessarily like really frustrating to see, but I mean, those shots will go in different games. So it's why Kentucky only won this game by 7. That and the fact that Vanderbilt was playing some awful basketball that shouldn't be allowed. quite frankly. But at one point, Vanderbilt, cut it to 1. Then the Kentucky got back up to 10 in the second half, and then it was a 5-point game. Ended up being a 7-point win for the Wildcats. There were 10 minutes left in the game, almost about 10 minutes left in this game, and Kentucky was in the double bonus. If that doesn't tell you how bad the officiating was, I don't know what to say. And what's worse is that there were probably some fouls that weren't called. So both the officiating, I don't think was great. And if you're living here on the Twitter sphere, if you go to Twitter, you'll probably, if you follow enough Kentucky folks, see 30 different videos of different things like, why was this not a foul? Why was this not a foul? So the officiating was not great, and Vanderbilt stinks, is all I got to say. And I'll say one more thing here. I got a reply from somebody after I was talking about how, the Vanderbilt style of play stinks. If they're going to foul everybody and try and make it a free throw contest, it's not an entertaining game. And somebody said, it was like, well, you don't have to call every single foul if you're an official. You can just call the first 3 or 4 in a row in the first half, and then that sets the tone. And while I respect that, in my opinion, I don't think it does for the most part. Because look at a team like LSU. They play a similar brand of basketball. They foul hard. They put you on the free throw line. They play very physical. And something interesting about LSU is that you notice in the first half, they're going to play physical defense, and they'll get those 3 or 4 fouls in a row, and then they'll continue to play physical defense. Why? Because if a team gets in the bonus early, an official usually feels the need to even things up. Because if the discrepancy is 7 or 8 fouls, you got to do something. I mean, you're literally calling a one-sided game. Even if the team is deserving of being called for everything that they do, it's a one-sided game still. And so in an official's mind, they've like, I've got to even this out. So they'll do one of two things. They'll either start calling fouls on the opposing team that are ticky-tack, or they'll try and even things up by just simply not calling fouls on one team and letting the other team catch up. We've seen that happen time and time and time again in the SEC this season. And I know that some people have been saying, why are you all complaining about SEC officials? Because the SEC polls from different conferences, and it's not like they're just strictly SEC officials. That's right. So why don't we start just complaining about college basketball officiating as a whole? At the same time, too, why doesn't the SEC try and go and get better officials that statistically call better games? I don't know. It legitimately became a free throw shooting contest in the second half. Kentucky shot a ton of free throws in this game. I've been complaining about the Wildcats not being able to get to the free throw line. We got it in this game, boys. 35 free throws from the Wildcats. They made 25 of them, 71.4%. Not great, I'll take it. But yeah, Vanderbilt put this team on the line. They made them earn it there, and Kentucky eventually ended up doing it. Sheboy, I believe, also he picked up his second technical, which, from my understanding, after you get 2 techs, you're thrown out of the game, but it did not happen, so I guess I'm an idiot. I'm just an idiot in general. But Sheboy got 2 technicals, fighting down low with Vanderbilt center Quentin Malora-Brown, 6'10" senior, probably the tallest player on Vanderbilt's roster. And Malora-Brown may be Kentucky's most hated player right now. I don't have anything against him. I'll just say I did not enjoy watching him and Sheboy try and get a rebound. It was just not great basketball, not great officiating on either end. There weren't a lot of handshakes, like I mentioned earlier, at the end of this game. And I don't necessarily want to sit here and be like, yeah, there are no handshakes, good. Yeah, these two teams should hate each other. Because it's Vanderbilt. I'm not trying to start a rivalry with Vanderbilt. We've won, 13 straight now against them? But again, I just, from a philosophy standpoint, if you're trying to, that's the way you want to play basketball, that's just not fun basketball, Vanderbilt. It's not fun basketball. And quite frankly, I'm surprised that if you are going to run it that way and you're going to have one kid shooting, I'm surprised that kids will want to come and play there. I'm surprised that they've had enough success on the recruiting trail as they have. It is what it is. They tried to foul late. Vanderbilt couldn't get it done. Kentucky made enough free throws to hold them off. It was a 7-point win. I was way off on this game. I thought Kentucky would blow them out. Thought Kentucky would handle the rebounding margin. Thought Kentucky would get out and transition better. They did not. We'll talk about some of the parameters here actually in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to tell you guys about an incredible app everyone who buys gas needs to know about. Get Upside. If you have Get Upside, as all Locked On Kentucky listeners should, then you will be making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time you fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store or Google Play right now and use promo code SCORE and get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Again, just download the app for free and use promo code SCORE to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. All right, wrapping up the Thursday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Again, thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're listening on podcast. Really appreciate you either way. You guys have been awesome in terms of support for the pod recently. Really appreciate you guys and the engagement and just getting to talk to y'all. It's awesome. All right, final thoughts here. The parameters, we'll go over them real quickly. Did Kentucky shoot well from the floor? Well, I mentioned just a little bit ago that Kentucky shot 50% from the floor in the first half. They ended up shooting 38.6%. And part of that was because Vanderbilt was playing very hard defense, very physical defense. And part of that was, like I mentioned, there were a lot of shots that just rimmed in and out for the Wildcats. So did Kentucky shoot well from the floor? No, they didn't. Shot 44.4% from three. That's good. But from the floor, no. That's my parameter. The answer is no. They did not check that box. Did they have decent shot selection? I think so. They just didn't knock them down. And part of the time they were fouled and they were put on the free throw line. So that was part of it. So, yes, I think Kentucky did have decent shot selection in this game. Did Kentucky play well in transition? Well, they had 14 fast break points as opposed to Vanderbilt's 4. So I want to say yes, but at the same time, there was not a lot of transition game going on in this contest. And I honestly feel like there could have been a little bit more. But again, Vanderbilt was just hacking at everything that they saw move. So it was just not, in my opinion, no, I did not think they played great in transition. And then the final thing here, did Kentucky protect the rim? They had 5 blocks, but there were multiple points in this game where Pippen had just a gorgeous move inside, and he found himself getting a layup. But as other players like Jordan Wright, I'm going to say kinda, because Vanderbilt did shoot 46% from the floor, which is above their average. But it's there were moments where Kentucky did protect the rim, and then there were moments where they didn't. And I'll just say down low, I mean, it was just so difficult all game. Very, very physical in the second half. Vanderbilt really turned up the intensity. Not to say I'm impressed by that, but again, this Vanderbilt team, they've got to get more shooters if they want to become a legitimate threat down the road. And again, it's just the style of play. I don't think you're going to find that style of play commonly utilized by teams that are legitimately good. And can use their athleticism and talent to win themselves games. I think you're going to see that utilized by teams that don't necessarily have the talent to compete with everyone else. And while I may dislike it, that's the reality. There are going to be good teams. There are going to be bad teams that have to find a way to catch up. That's what Vanderbilt tried to do in this game. Is there anything else I want to go over before we wrap the show up here? I mentioned the rebounding. One more thing here, actually, that I did not mention. So 27 fouls as opposed to Kentucky's 19. Vanderbilt had 16 turnovers. That was one of the 4 things I asked at the end of yesterday's episode. Can Kentucky turn Vanderbilt over more? Had 16 turnovers as opposed to Kentucky's 9. And Kentucky had 15 points off of Vanderbilt's 16 turnovers. Could have capitalized on that a little bit more. But again, just Vanderbilt fouling literally every other possession really, really killed the Wildcats' momentum in this game. So looking ahead down the road, you asked the question, would Shaedon Sharpe play? I said I don't know. And I said that I would really like to see him in the Vanderbilt game, and that if we didn't see Shaedon in this game, I don't know if we're going to see him for the rest of the season. We did not see Shaedon Sharpe in this game because it was close. Go figure. But his offense would have been really nice in this game. Did not get it, though. And you look down the road, I mean, there's no chance that he plays this season. He's going to go to the draft. That's my opinion now, officially, because we play at Alabama, which is going to be a fun game. I say that jokingly. That's right now, looking at this Kentucky team. I mean, they're still very, very good. But if Alabama wants to play like Vanderbilt, and Alabama's got some athleticism, that could be a tough game. So I had Alabama at South Carolina, at home against Florida, at Tennessee, at home against Alabama and then LSU, on the road at Arkansas, at home against Ole Miss, and then on the road at Florida. Yeah, Shaden is not playing for the rest of this season. I'm sorry, and I want him to really badly. But unless Cal just feels the need to put in a freshman that has literally not stepped onto the court to play collegiate ball in the SEC tournament or March Madness, I just don't see it happening. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. You can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_. You can follow the show on Twitter at Kentucky, or Instagram at Kentucky Podcast. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hit me on the socials, hit me in the YouTube comments down below. I really appreciate all of you guys listening. I will see you all tomorrow. Have a good day, and God bless.